Hi guys, and welcome back to my channel. So today we are here to talk about the cake mix foundation from the Beauty Bakerie. So if that's something you guys are interested in watching, then you're in the right place. We're about to get into it.
I'm a lone wolf. I'm a lone wolf. I'm a lone wolf. I'm a lone wolf. I'm a lone wolf.
All right guys, so this foundation has been the subject of much controversy. There are a lot of YouTubers out there, and I mean a lot of YouTubers out there, that really did not like this foundation. They didn't like the way that it applied. They didn't like the way that it sat on the skin. A lot of influencers had a very hard time with application, and I think there is a reason why, because I went through the same thing. So when this foundation first launched, if you guys saw a previous video of mine, I described to you the cluster that happened when I first tried to order this foundation. It was a customer service nightmare. But the Beauty Bakerie did step up and actually correct the error that took place during the ordering process. And they actually not only sent me the shade that I initially ordered, but they sent it to me without any cost to myself. They refunded my initial order. In addition to that one foundation, they sent two foundations, my shade that I ordered and then another shade just in case that one wasn't my correct shade. They also sent me a beauty blender, which I love their beauty blending sponges. I got one of the egg crates that comes with a half a dozen in there, and I continue to use them. I do like their beauty blenders. So they sent one of those along with the two foundations. And they also sent this lovely little bag that says I just cake a lot on it. And it's just a little cosmetics bag that is super cute. So I got that whole little package and was absolutely very happy and very thrilled to receive it, and very glad that they corrected their error, especially in this age of customer service gone awry. The Beauty Bakerie definitely stepped up and fixed the ordering error. All right, so let's get into the foundation itself. So as always, the Beauty Bakerie is infamous for their packaging, and this little beauty is no exception. So it comes in this cute little box that actually opens and has a little window in here that displays the foundation itself, and then you can just pull this out and the foundation itself comes out. And I'll show you guys a close-up here of the box itself. It's so cute. It actually, again, has that door that you open, and it has a little mirror that says who's the sweetest of them all, and they even go on as to directions on the side of how to use the cake mix. It also has like nutritional facts on one side, and then on the back it goes into detail about the ingredients that you're going to need, and like a little recipe in order to use the actual product, which I think is absolutely precious. Like, could you die? The product itself retails for $28, and you get 1 ounce of product. So it's a pretty standard amount, but $28 is great for an indie brand to retail. They claim that this foundation is a demi-matte finish and that it provides medium to full coverage. So that is pretty much the rundown on just a high view overlook of the foundation itself. Now, I'll give you guys a close-up of what the actual bottle looks like. The bottle itself is a nice frosted glass. It has this rose gold top with rose gold etching on it, and then of course it also has a pump. Now this foundation is again medium to full coverage. It claims to be smudge proof, skin smoothing, creamy but lightweight so it doesn't clog your pores. It's infused with vitamin E to protect your skin and keep you quote unquote looking sweet. This also comes in 30 shades ranging from dark to light, and this is also vegan. So for all you vegans out there, here's a foundation for you. Now, the two shades that I got from the Beauty Bakerie were 39 and 43, as I tend to run with a pretty neutral undertone. So a couple of things that you should know about this foundation right off the bat. It does dry down. I don't want to say oxidize. It causes a little hesitation there in my voice when I say it changes color, but it doesn't necessarily oxidize. So oxidation is what happens when a formula comes in contact with the air and actually kind of changes shade a little bit. This, when it dries down, it has a different tone to it and it is darker. So a lot of people will automatically jump the gun and say, oh, it oxidizes to a darker color. It just has a darker sheen when it dries down, and nowadays in beauty, even though that's not technically what oxidation is, that's what everyone's going to call it. So it does dry down to about a shade deeper. So I would go a shade lighter than what you think you would order, and it will actually probably be perfect for you. So that's one note. Another note is that it claims to be a demi-matte finish. Now, I think that this is actually more of a true matte finish because it is a very matte formula. I have it on my face tonight, and it is a very matte formula. So when it dries down, it also dries down to a very matte finish, so you don't really need to set it. It almost feels like a powdery finish to it. When it dries down, it really dries down completely, and it sets quite well. So if you're someone that doesn't like to over powder, you might really like this particular foundation. Now, when it comes to application, that is where a lot of people genuinely were struggling. And I was one of those people in the beginning as well. I'll show you some footage here of what happens when I attempted to use Beauty Blender to blend the product onto the skin. So as you can see, as you use a Beauty Blender, it doesn't really blend the product out. This is a very quick drying matte formula. So you don't have a whole lot of time to work with when you're putting the foundation onto the skin. So you need to work in sections. But having said that, when you go in with a Beauty Blender and then you go on top of that area as you're blotting, it's like it's lifting product every time you use the Beauty Blender on the side of your face, and that can be very frustrating because as you're doing this and you're trying to blend, you get a nice first layer, and then as you go up to blend another area, anywhere that you touch on the previous area, it lifts it. If you go back over it, like a lot of us do, where we go back and forth like this until we blend it out, as you're going over it, you're lifting product off and it's not laying product down, and it comes off looking very blotchy, and it becomes very difficult to work with. I can't tell you how many times I started with the product and would just wipe my whole face off and start again, and then would just put it down and go to another foundation out of frustration. So I went back as I was going to make the video, and I was not going to give it a pleasant review and just show you guys the results that I personally had when applying the foundation. I started into the research portion of my videos. For those of you that are new here and you haven't seen any of my prior videos, I actually do a lot of research when it comes to products because the information that I want to give you guys, A, I need it to be correct, B, I want to make sure that you don't have a lot of questions at the end of the video, and C, I always like to sound like I at least have done some due diligence before giving my opinion about a brand, especially if it's going to be a negative opinion. So I was going through and I was doing my due diligence, and I was researching the foundation, looking on the website, researching the ingredients, and I started noticing little words here and there that made me kind of step back for a second and think about the way that I applied the product, and that was probably not the correct way. So the first clue is actually on the back of the box. If you'll notice at the back of the box, it says things you'll need. And one of the first items here is the baking oil. So when you're dealing with a very dry foundation, or a foundation that dries down very quickly, it's not that it's a drying foundation, it's just that it dries down very fast. A lot of times a product like a facial oil will help with the emolliency and the blendability of of the formulation and actually give you a little bit of extra time to work with the product prior to it locking onto the skin. So the first thing I did was purchase their Wake and Bake baking oil. And not only is this baking oil fantastic, but it's really necessary in order to make the foundation work. Now, a lot of you are asking, does it have to be the Wake and Bake beauty oil? Because no, it doesn't have to be. Any kind of facial oil that is out there would be perfect for this, or any kind of prepping oil. This is from Makeup Revolution, and this is actually called their baking primer oil. So it's very similar in ingredients to this. However, this is $28 from the Beauty Bakery, and I think this was like $7. So there is a big cost difference there, but they're essentially the same thing. So any kind of face oil out there will do the same thing. Farsali drops that are out there would probably work very well with this particular foundation. Any kind of primer that is got an oil base to it or will help you with slip would be great, but I do recommend that you stick to an oil formula. Now, this is something that causes concern, especially to oily girls out there. A lot of oily girls out there think initially, oh my God, the last thing I want to do is put a face oil all over my face before putting on my foundation. But this particular oil, and I can speak to this particular formula because this is what I know to be true about this particular formula and this one. So I know these two pretty much function the same, but for the purposes of this video, we're going to talk about this particular oil. This particular oil has a lot of marula oil in it. Now, one thing about marula oil and the 11 other oils that they have in this formula, not only does it hydrate, protect, and nourish your skin, but it has lightning fast absorption, which doesn't leave your face feeling oily, and it can be used on your face, and it can also be used on your skin, your nails, your lips. It's perfect for all skin types because it's hyperallergenic and non-comedogenic. Again, it's infused with the marula oil, which is very quick absorbing, but it leaves your skin very moisturized, hydrated, and luminous as well. So the actual ingredients in this will be very beneficial to all skin types when it comes to hydration, and again, giving the foundation a little bit more of an emollient base. So oily girls, you're going to be okay because this is not an oil that's going to sit on top of the skin or contribute to any of the oils that you're naturally producing. This is actually going to quickly absorb into the skin so that you're not left with any greasy residue on your face. So another clue is actually on their website. When you look at the foundation and you start looking at the ingredients and the description and the claims that they make about this particular foundation, they actually have a section on here that's called baking tips. And it's little tips and tricks to help you with the application of the foundation itself. Now, included in the baking tips was instruction as it's going through. It says to make sure that when you're applying the foundation that you're not moving or rubbing, and that you're using stippling or patting motions with this particular formula. So one thing that I decided to try was ditching the beauty blender and ditching my big kabuki brush that I have that I usually use to buff foundation into the skin. And I went with a little bit of a denser brush, which is this particular brush right here, but any dense foundation brush I think will do. I know the Real Techniques has a couple of dense blending brushes. There's any kind of face blending brush out there that is a more dense blending brush will be perfect for application of this foundation. And instead of using blending motions or patting and swiping motions with a beauty blender, what worked for me was really taking this and just pressing it into the skin just like this and working in sections as they recommend. So at the end of the day, when it came down to it, I actually followed the instructions from Beauty Bakerie themselves. I used the oil. I made sure that I used a brush for foundation application, and I made sure I wasn't doing any swiping or blending motions. I was strictly doing patting and stippling motions. I worked in sections because it is a quick dry down time. And for me, that was the perfect recipe for application. And I'll show you what that application looks like here. One of the reasons why I feel like they encourage you to really gently tap in the foundation in stippling and not rubbing, is because of the dry down time of this foundation being incredibly fast. It'll dry down in streaks, and once this foundation dries down, you guys, it's not going anywhere. So Beauty Bakerie is very known for formulas that really lock down. Their lip whips are a perfect example. Once those suckers are on your lips, they're not going anywhere until you use an oil-based makeup remover to get them off. Their concealer is very much the same way. Their foundation is very much the same way. So once I got the application down, it actually looks really, really nice. And it lasts an incredibly long time. So this particular foundation for me has lasted all the way through 12-hour days, 13-hour days, 14-hour days. Once I knew how to apply the formula, then I was really excited so I could really try it out in hot, humid weather, in cold weather, in rainy weather. They claim that this is transfer proof, sweat proof, all of that stuff, and it genuinely is. It is one of the longest lasting foundations that I have seen out there in a long time. So initially, I really did not like the Beauty Bakerie concealer, and that is because it has such a quick dry down time. So in my mind, I associated that with it being a very dry formula. It's not that it's a dry formula, it just has a very fast dry down time. And I was applying it like I normally apply my concealer, with a damp beauty blender and screwing it up the same way I was screwing up my foundation. So I initially chucked the Beauty Bakerie concealer off to just being a dry formula that didn't blend out very well. I wasn't impressed with it at all, and it was one of my fails. Well, once I rediscovered how to actually apply the Beauty Bakerie foundation, it made me excited to want to go back and experiment with the concealer to see if the same principles kind of applied with that particular concealer as well. And I was surprised to find out that they did. So one of the things that I did was I took the hydrating wake and bake, and I took it all the way up to right about here underneath the eyes. And then instead of doing a swipe here and a swipe here and then starting with my beauty blender and rubbing it out, I would get that same problem that I was getting with the foundation, where I was like lifting the product off and I couldn't get it blended out, and it was really aggravating. And then by the time I got to this side, it had like dried down to my face where I couldn't even like move it around. So I started back over again, and again I put the oil underneath, but then I took a brush and I just did the pressing motions like this. Just the pressing motions to get it nice and blended out in the under eye area. And then I did the other eye. So I worked in sections, and I just did one eye at a time. And I'll tell you guys, this concealer has lasted as long as the foundation has. I have the concealer on my eyes tonight, and it is a beautiful concealer. It has a lot of pigment in it. I loved the amount of pigment in it, and I loved the color and the undertones of the concealer, which made me a little frustrated when I couldn't get it to work. But now that I've gotten it to work, I genuinely like this formula. It's not, again, that it's a dry formula. I have very dry under eyes, so I cannot deal with a formula that dries out your under eyes like the Sahara Desert. The Tarte Shape Tape comes to mind. That's why I can't use that particular concealer, because it just really dries out my under eyes. The Beauty Bakerie concealer is different in that it doesn't dry your under eyes out, but it does lock down very, very quickly. So you have to work in sections and do one eye at a time. And again, no smearing or rubbing. You have to use those pressing motions. And for me, a brush was the better option. Now, this concealer is in the shade Don't Give a Frappe. frappe. And again, go a little bit lighter than you normally would, because when it does dry down, it has a little bit of a darker finish to it. Now this is a matte finish, so it's a nice matte finish under the eye without being incredibly drying. Now this retails for $24, and again, on the baking tips on the foundation, it does say to blend beneath one eye at a time right away, as this matte finish dries very, very fast. So again, on there under the baking tips for the concealer, it also says to make sure that you tap on the cake face concealer and press it in with a concealer brush to avoid creases and to get a good application of product. So again, they're telling you to make sure that you're pressing the product into the skin as opposed to blending motions or any kind of rubbing or patting motions with a damp beauty blender. So for me, once I figured out this formula and I really figured out the application routine, I was ecstatic, because it gave me a chance to actually explore the formula, test it out, take it out for a test drive, and see if I really, really liked it. And honestly, guys, I really, really do. And I did not think I was going to. I honestly thought this review was going to go the complete, total, and opposite direction. I was prepared to get on here and make a video and tell you guys that this foundation was an absolute fail. But it just goes to show that when you guys invest money in a product and it doesn't work for you the first time, make sure that you go back and you look at the product, read the directions. You know, a lot of companies put out directions and instructions for a reason. Particular formulas need to work a specific way, and not all formulas are created equal. Some need to be put on with a brush, others work better with a beauty blender. A lot of foundations that are out there that are like this, and this one is no exception. It just happens to work a particular way. And the way that I have found that it works the best is in conjunction with a oil on the face, a brush stippling motion, and the concealer the same way. And honestly, once you do that, you just get a beautiful result, and I'm very, very happy with the result that I've gotten. I mean, honestly, guys, take a look at my foundation. This was all applied at 8 o'clock this morning. It's now almost midnight, and I always have foundation missing off the end of the nose, the chin, the forehead, up here where my cheeks are. And when your foundation stays on all day, everything that you've placed on top of it tends to stay on all day as well. My blush still looks freshly applied. You can still see my highlight, which usually is unheard of at this time of day for me. My foundation is still on. This is one of the longest lasting formulas that I've used in quite a while, and my concealer is the same way. Typically it will be rubbed off a little bit. It definitely won't be this bright. I will say this, if you are going to set this, because it's already a matte formula, if you're going to set it, don't use a lot of powder, because it is a matte formula. If you pile a lot of powder on top of it, you are going to start looking a little cakey, and that's not anything that any of us wants. You really don't need to set this foundation at all. But if you're an oily girl and you need to set, and I set under my eyes because I don't like the texture that I have under my eyes will cause creasing no matter what formula I'm using. So I have to set my under eyes. So you just go in with a very light dusting underneath the eyes just to set the under eyes. And if you're going to set the rest of the face, then I would recommend just like setting your T-zone, just a nice quick powder. Don't bake with it. I wouldn't recommend that you bake with it. You know, I've seen some YouTubers out there that work with this foundation phenomenally well. They don't have any problems with it, and they cake on the powder and they bake with it in the whole 9 yards. I would question what that looks like in a couple of hours, but I don't know. I don't know how they're doing that. But what I can say is that I have seen a lot of people really tearing this foundation apart. And once I started playing with it, I was like, oh my God, this is why. But at the end of the day, guys, it's really just about the way that you apply it. So application is everything. Once I got the application down, this is one of my favorite foundations now. I genuinely love this foundation. So kudos to the Beauty Bakerie. I guess I'm the dummy for not reading the correct way to actually apply the product. That's my fault. But, you know, learn, and you never know so much that you can't learn some more. So I guess that's a good lesson for all of us. All right, guys, listen, thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate you guys coming by and spending time with me as always. And don't forget, we have that contest going on with the 2 Arabesque palettes. All you have to do is make sure you're a subscriber, make sure that you like that video, which is like the one before this, I think. I'll put the link up here, and make sure that in those comments that you put how you want me to get in touch with you in case you are the winner. So I'm really excited about the giveaway. We're going to be doing a live stream this weekend. Everybody stay tuned to my Instagram. That will be where you see when the live stream is going live so that everybody can come and join. It's going to be so much fun. I love talking to you guys over live stream. I really do enjoy it. If you're new here, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and the notification bell so that you're notified every time one of my videos goes live. If you like the work I do, feel free to check out the link in the credits and you can support this channel. Other than that, I hope you guys are happy and that you're healthy and that you're enjoying this week, and I will see you guys in the next video.